Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined by Zane Simon for the sixth round of UFC Fox Johnson versus Bader. I said before the fight, I don't know if the word versus belongs between those two names, and it didn't. That was not a fight. That was a beating. Terrible gamesmanship by Bader, jumping in for a no shot takedown. Didn't set it up with strikes. I don't know what he was thinking, but he put himself in the worst possible position you can be in against Anthony Johnson and got knocked out in 54 seconds.
Funny thing was is that it seemed like he was fighting like Anthony Johnson out there, where it's just like I got to go to my desperation game plan immediately, and if that fails, I'm screwed. Like that's classic Anthony Johnson fighting. That's all. And the thing is that Johnson, for all the shit he gets about this idea of him being like a one-round fighter and a big puncher and all that, he's a really solid wrestler and always has been. The problem's more that he forgets he's a solid wrestler and fights like he has no chance to wrestle with anyone.
Yeah, and trying to shoot in on him with a weak ass, not set up, not fast, not deep, not explosive takedown attempt like that. I mean,
never gonna happen.
No, anybody could have told you that is not going to work. I mean, Bader could have done virtually anything else. He could have come out with a rolling thunder kick and been better off than that. I mean, he could have gone for a 360 spinning roundhouse kick, some double spinning reverse elbows, anything. But that was probably the lowest percentage move he had. He got knocked out in minute 26. Sorry, I said 54 seconds before. I don't know what I was thinking there. But yeah, so, and then, of course, before the fight, Daniel Cormier basically pissed all over it by saying, it doesn't matter who wins this fight. Me and John Jones are going to be busy fighting each other all year long. And so there's really not a lot of excitement or momentum here. I mean, it sets Anthony Rumble Johnson up, presumably, to fight John Jones. So John Jones beat Daniel Cormier in that anticipated rematch, which is, ironically, the fight we were anticipating a year ago when John Jones got busted and had to bow out. So the more things change, the more they'd stay the same.
Yeah, and I think Rumble he seems like a guy that's smart enough and probably has enough money saved away to sit out and just wait for that fight to come. So
yeah,
I think he will. I think he does. I don't. I mean, we know John Jones has been good enough to beat DC in the past. So if he's just willing to wait 8 months, he can get that fight again.
Yeah, it shouldn't be any problem. And there's really nobody else in the light heavyweight top 10. I mean, he's already demolished Alexander Gustafsson. Now he's destroyed number 4 Ryan Bader. Glover Teixeira, I'm not losing any sleep over that one. Ovince St. Preux, I don't see him beating Rumble Johnson. You got Rashad Evans and Mauricio Shogun Hua out there fighting each other soon. I mean, yeah. So Rumble should be fine to sit and wait for the winner of Jones Cormier, and there you are. And that, to me, this is the end of Ryan Bader's title hopes. Like, I do not see this guy putting together another run.
If he's smart, he'll turn around and champion for a fight against Gus or somebody like that, somebody else who has lost their contention with those top few fighters.
Yeah, but I don't think losing to Alexander Gustafsson is going to get him anywhere, and I see that happening. All right, so and not much to say. I mean, Anthony Johnson looked sharp, stuffing a bad takedown and beating up a guy who's laying on his belly underneath you. Not exactly the best test of one of the world's top fighters. He passed it.
Nothing happened in that fight that we didn't know and Anthony Johnson was totally capable of doing. I mean, this is a dude that was able to drop DC, able to drop Alexander Gustafsson. We know he has huge power early, and we've seen him in other fights where he's shown that, he can stuff a shot, he can wrestle, he can do all that other stuff. So the questions were really about longevity and whether if he was put under pressure, he would be able to fight deep against somebody going after him. But this doesn't answer that.
No, it doesn't even shed any light on that at all. All right, and so in the co-main event, you had heavyweight Ben Rothwell submit Josh Barnett by guillotine choke in the second round, 3 minutes, 48 seconds. A little bit surprising there insofar as Rothwell basically completely dominated Barnett. Stem to stone.
Yeah, I mean, heavyweight's such a clown shoes of a division. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Nothing tells you how ridiculous heavyweight MMA is better than Ben Rothwell being the first man to ever submit Josh Barnett in MMA.
That is a pretty unlikely scenario there. And Barnett's been in with some of the best grapplers in MMA history, and Rothwell gets him on a really pretty plain guillotine choke. Maybe there's some nuances to it I missed, but from watching it,
10-finger guillotine is what it's called. So it's hands clasped right under the chin, like squeezing kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not a move of great sophistication. There wasn't an elaborate setup. There wasn't a chain of feints and submission battles leading up to it. Barnett got himself in a bad position. Rothwell seized the moment, got the tap, and there we go. And you know, like I was saying to you before we started the show, the only fight on this card I really enjoyed was seeing Sage Northcutt tap Sage quick tap Northcutt, as Joe Rogan dubbed him after the fight. We're skipping over Jimmy Rivera, a decision in Alcantara, in a fine fight that to me had no business on network television. I mean, it was fine. It doesn't have any particular significance in one of the least significant divisions in the UFC. Presumably Rivera's on his way to contention, but again,
it gets Rivera ranked. That was the point of that fight, was that it gets him a ranking spot, and I actually missed that fight. I had some technical difficulties.
It was a pretty close fight. Both guys had some moments. Rivera, I thought, won it with some takedowns. Alcantara round on all three judges' cards. He was winning in the very last seconds. I thought he lost the third round, but he landed a pretty sharp shot and went for a rolling Kimura that Rivera fended off with ease there at the end. So I don't think anybody's losing any sleep over missing Rivera or Alcantara. You, Zane Simon, will want to catch it. It was a fun fight. There were some good techniques. I think we learned a lot about Rivera. I think he is for real as a contender. I don't know that he's title material, but he is definitely somebody that will give anybody in the top 10 a tough fight, top 5, probably a tough fight. Alcantara is a very good journeyman at this point, I would say.
Yeah.
But much more fun was Brian Barberena submitting Sage Northcutt via an arm triangle choke from the half guard. He claims he gets it all the time in practice, but everybody else is saying, dude, you cannot get tapped from that position. That was just a panic on Sage Northcutt's part.
It should be noted, we have seen guys get arm triangles from half guard. That is something we have seen happen.
Yes.
But a wrong-sided arm triangle from half guard where, you know, the guy like taps really quickly the moment it's on, that is not indicative of you having some monster squeeze from that position. It's not. It's indicative of, like, I went into this fight saying Sage Northcutt is going to lose this year. It may not be. I don't think it's this fight. I didn't expect it because Barberena is such a slow starter and Sage Northcutt is a really fast starter. But he's going to lose in 2016, and it just happened to be this fight. I mean, he is way, way, way too green to be moving up the division in a hurry, and to be fighting experienced, tough competition as often as he is. Like regional fighters do not fight guys like this often in this quick succession. If they're fighting this often, they're fighting a lot of cans or a lot of weird like whoever they can pull off the street kind of fights, and you know they're getting good experience doing it. They're not going through and fighting, you know, all the guys in the UFC are basically all the guys who win on the regionals. They're all tough, hard-nosed, experienced fighters. And Northcutt was trying to treat them like they were regional fodder. And at some point, that was not going to happen.
Yeah, no. And still a very talented kid, but a very green kid who until very recently, he's been training a little bit at TriStar in Montreal, but until very recently he's been training in his dad's gym in Katy, Texas, and just there's no way.
You know, he looked like he'd never been put in that position before, and that's totally legitimately probably likely that nobody had ever really put him through a hard roll and, you know, slapped a choke on him, and now he's just like, oh shit. Tap, 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 you know?
Yeah, it is a terrible way to handle a talented prospect.
Yep.
And throwing him into 3 fights in as many months. I mean, it's just crazy. The UFC is so desperate to have another Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey, and they really seem to think that they had something of amazing interest and appeal here in Sage Northcutt. Hey, he's a talented kid, maybe even freakishly talented.
Yeah.
But I've seen no indication he's got any kind of charisma or savvy, and now we've seen that he's got extremely limited MMA game. He's very young. He's got plenty of time to learn, but the psychological whiplash of putting a kid like that on Fox, putting all this marketing push behind him,
I got to say,
manifestly unready.
Northcutt looks like the kind of person who has enough self-confidence and like happy-go-lucky attitude that it would like power a star base, you know? Like I do not.
I mean, I see why they're interested, and I see why they're doing it.
But I'm just thinking in terms of his ability to bounce back from a loss. I don't see somebody who's ever going to dwell on a loss, you know.
One would hope, but you never know. You never know. And it's certainly not conventional wisdom of how to build what you think is a blue chip fighter. Like,
yeah.
You know,
they might have another Conor McGregor or another Ronda Rousey, but Conor McGregor took 6 years to get to the UFC, or 5 years to get to the UFC, and was basically a fully developed long-term pro. He lost a couple of times to sub on his way to the UFC. You know, just like shit like this, where he was overconfident and got choked out.
Yep.
And Ronda Rousey is fighting at women's bantamweight and not lightweight and welterweight, which are the toughest, most difficult, impossible divisions to move up through in the world.
Yeah, and this whole decision to move him up to welterweight, I presume it was probably close to his walking around weight, and he didn't have to make a cut. And then since it was short notice and they wanted to beef up the card and they wanted to expose him on the card, but all they've done is expose him on the card in the worst sense. I mean, he made his introduction to millions of people, and they saw him lose badly in embarrassing fashion. I mean, he quick tapped to a hold that Joe Rogan can't even cover for him. You know, it's just, well, you know, it is what it is, but it was great fun for anybody who likes to see the underdog win, because, I mean, you know.
All the dudes who hate everything he's got are happy as hell right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's you know, it was a loss in a way that has everybody saying, oh, he's got no heart. Like, the kid has no heart. No white belt would even quick tap to that sub. And it's honestly, it just looks like he has no seasoning at all.
Yeah,
no
grappling.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, no grappling.
Nothing to do with heart. Just got the position and panicked, and that's it. Yeah. Like, you watch watching those old UFC events way back in the day, and you can't tell me that like some of those brawlers didn't have heart. Those dudes ran almost entirely on heart. But you put them on the ground on their back, and suddenly they were just like, oh shit, panic, you know, just. Flailing, tapping, slapping the mat as hard as they can because they don't know what a tap is.
Yeah, that was very similar to that. So that was the highlight of the night, as it was. Well, let's run through the preliminary card on Fox Sports 1. You had Tarek Saffiedine decision at Jake Ellenberger. Not the most fun fight. Unanimous decision. Ellenberger tagged him a couple times, and same word on Ellenberger. He punches hard as hell, but that's pretty much all he's got.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just shop worn at this point. It honestly looked to me like Kings has at least given him back the confidence that he can eat shots again, but they haven't been able to give him the confidence to actually like get in and brawl again. And without that confidence, it's incredibly hard to win a fight when you're throwing 5 shots around. Like,
yeah,
no matter how hard they are.
Yeah, 2 of them landed and the rest of them missed, and the rest of the time Saffiedine just picked him apart, and you know, wasn't a great deal of fun. Then you had Carlos Diego Ferreira decision Olivier Aubin-Mercier in a completely uninteresting fight. Anything of interest in that fight to you?
No, I picked Carlos to win it, and that's exactly why. He's a more active puncher and a better grappler, and Aubin-Mercier, I mean, this is getting back to UFC and prospects and how do you build guys, and
and this is not the road to Wonderland. And then you had middleweight Rafael Natal actually finish Kevin Casey in the 3rd round. Used some fight IQ, got him down, got him in the mount. I thought he was going to let him up and brawl with him some more, but that would have been more typical of Natal. But He did what he needed to do, got the finish in the third round. Really, was it into the first round or the second where he tagged, just creamed Casey with a punch, flash
right at the end of the
knockdown?
first round.
Yeah, and from there on, it was over. Casey couldn't recover between rounds, and Natal just beat the piss out of him and finally took him down and finished it in the third round. Then you had a flyweight Wilson Heiss decision, Dustin Ortiz. Heiss, I guess, is Rogan named him the hottest prospect in the flyweight division, which for a 30-something-year-old that's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, this is a guy who, he was fighting on Show XC and Elite XC cards. Wilson Hayes was. He has a win over Abel Cullum. And if you remember who Abel Cullum is,
you are an old school fan.
Yeah,
this is, and it's disappointing for Ortiz, who seems to be sort of the speed bump in the flyweight division, less so than the gatekeeper.
It's the worst loss. It's the worst fight I've seen Ortiz have in the UFC. He looked way worse than he did against Benavidez, than he did against John Moraga. This fight, Hayes just outclassed him absolutely. I mean, on that note, it's the best fight of Hayes' career in the UFC. He looked absolutely fantastic, but it was weird. It was really unexpected to me.
Yeah, I assume either Ortiz had something wrong, an injury or a bad training camp, or his head wasn't in the game, or Heiss is just that big of a stylistic mismatch for him that he took away. Ortiz is somebody, I think, who's sort of a journeyman, jack of all trades more than a specialist in any one thing. And when you're fighting a BJJ champ like Heiss, especially one who's as physically strong as Heiss is, it takes away so much of your wrestling and your grappling game. And, and I don't think Ortiz has the pure striking game to just lord it over Heiss, who's a very tough guy. So there it is. But welterweight Alexander Yakovlev knocked out George Sullivan in the first round, 3 minutes, 59 seconds. Best performance tonight. I think Yakovlev looked really good.
Yeah, he did. He looked fantastic. I was pretty surprised by that. It's the first knockout for Yakovlev in 5 years. He's another guy the UFC was calling a prospect who started his career back in 2004. So I don't know how much improvement Yakovlev has, but he looks like he's found comfort in the UFC now. He looks like he's getting used to how the American game is played.
Yeah.
And it's really starting to string all his skills together. He's a very talented wrestler. He's a solid boxer. And Sullivan was just really overmatched. I was pretty damned impressed.
Yeah, it was. Of course, this is a fight happening well outside the top 15, so no telling how Yakovlev will do as he moves up the ladder, but he should be moving up the ladder. All right, Then we had featherweight Alex Caceres, a.k.a. Bruce Leroy, defeat Masio Full in unanimous decision. Landed a big 360 spinning kick. Pretty flashy performance from Bruce Leroy. Not anything really spectacular, but he needed the win badly, and he got it.
Yeah, good to see him return to form. Good to see him to return to the fighter that you are excited to see on cards, rather than a guy where you're like, oh man, I don't want to watch. I picked him to get knocked out in basically a minute by Francisco Rivera in that fight, and he did. And it's this is the guy we're looking at right now. So it's good to see him come back and look like the fun fighter he has been, and that's it. I mean, we still know he can turn into a very not fun fighter if he wants to, so I wouldn't put too
or
much
if he fights A-list competition, but at this level he did fine. And then you had 3 fights on UFC Fight Pass card. Randy Brown decision, Matt Dwyer, Damon Jackson, and Levan Makashvili had a draw after Makashvili was deducted a point for an eye poke and a knee to the ground. The referee cited the illegal knee when he deducted the point for the eye poke. Rogan and Goldberg were just going crazy over this, and so was Mark Ratner, the commissioner of the UFC, former commissioner, now UFC, whatever his official title is. He's the guy they always talk to about.
He's their rules manager or something.
And to me, there was just a profound misunderstanding of 2 things. One, insisting that it's a complete accident when somebody extends their hand and pokes the eye of the other guy. I mean, if you watch video of this fight and you showed it to a jury and you were pressing assault charges for an eye poke, the jury would say, yeah, he stood in front of the guy, poked him in the eye. I mean, it's not like the guy walked into his finger. He extended his hand, stretched out his fingers, and then poked him in the eye. Now, how you can insist that's accidental betrays some sort of misunderstanding of physics or human motivations. I don't know. I mean, why they're insisting that that's accidental when you can see it's done on purpose.
And I mean, there are 3 fouls that happen every UFC event all the time: eye pokes, groin kicks, fence grabs.
Yes.
Who gives a shit if they're accidental? They happen all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
They happen with enough frequency that we all know they're coming, and we all know they're going to happen at least once per card. We'll get some combination of each one. So at what point do you start realizing it doesn't matter if they're accidental? This is a part of the sport. You have to figure out and plan. You have to work around it. And the way you work around it is you say, you do it, you lose a point. Who cares if that's accidental? You did it.
Yeah, you did it. And also the knee while he was grounded, that's a more rare foul, only because that position is a little more rare than some of the others. But that is the most flagrant thing. I mean, he knew the guy was down. And need him illegally. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but it was a dirty fight by Makashvili, and I have no problem with him losing what would have probably been a decision win. I'm not excited about Damon Jackson or anything. It wasn't really a meaningful fight, but just the nonsensicalness and the idea that the ref couldn't, like, they seemed offended that he was deducting a point for the eye poke because it was the second foul, because it wasn't the same foul. Like,
yeah, you
like
have to
supposedly
do it multiple times for it to count toward the point deduction.
Yeah, like, so I mean, it's like if a guy was in there pulling hair, biting, fence grabbing, kneeing while you're down, kicking while you're down, and groin shotting, like, you're supposed to warn for each of those separately. And then he just, like, if he just keeps moving on to novel twists on cheating, it's like the ref's hands are tied, ladies and gentlemen. The ref's hands are tied. Like,
it shows how deeply ingrained the non-punishment and non-point deducting like philosophy is in the sport. How, from the outside we think like, oh, he should take a point, and how deep it is. It's like the 10-10 thing. You actually talk to judges about, hey, why don't you score 10-10 rounds? They'd be like, well, why don't you go fuck yourself? The stock reaction is like, why? It's like you're asking them, why don't you drown a child in front of an audience?
Yes.
You hear that, then you hear Rogan and Ratner and all these guys, and they're like, oh my God, how could you ever think that foul was intentional? Or take a point for multiple fouls, and you realize how ingrained it is in the psyche that, like, you don't take points.
Yeah, and I thought it was great reffing myself, and I was glad to see it. So, hats off.
You'll probably get shit from the commission. That's
entirely
we'll probably get shit for it.
Yeah, entirely possible. And then in the opener, you had Tony Martin choke out Felipe Oliveira in a fight I found amusing, third round. I found amusing because of the buildup before the fight was, the exciting new prospect out of Nova now, Felipe Oliveira, coming to make his octagon debut, and his opponent, Tony Martin. It's like,
well, once again, exciting new prospect started fighting 9 years ago.
Yeah, be that as it may, it was just the contrast in the buildup. When you got one guy who's built up as the opponent, and then he comes out and wins. Oliveira was certainly not impressing me. There was no head movement in that fight, for one thing. I mean, these guys were just standing right in front of each other, winging away.
It was pretty sad to see a striker like Oliveira, who really has cut his teeth as a power striker on the regional circuit, finally draw his grappling opponent into a striking battle and then lose that fight. Like, you finally got the guy to strike with you, and then he beats you. And that's not good. No, it wasn't pretty. So that's our card. And back to the main event. Anthony Rumble Johnson demolished Ryan Bader in 1:26 seconds. It was over as soon as the fight started because Ryan Bader, the first thing he did was shoot in for a takedown with no setup, through no strikes, no deception, no explosiveness, no penetration, no angle, just dived, got stuffed, and is immediately in a terrible position. Goes for a Kimura without the half guard position that you needed a minimum to get it. By all means, hold on to Rumble Johnson's hands because you saw what he did to Alexander Gustafsson if you leave his hands free on the ground in that position. But yeah, Bader screwed the pooch immediately, and
and Rumble Johnson rumbles right down the road. I mean, presumably number one contender presumably is going to get the winner of Daniel Cormier versus John Jones, which from the UFC's perspective, if John Jones wins, Rumble Johnson makes for a very interesting title challenge that will be fun. If Cormier wins, it still will be fun and interesting because Rumble Johnson, they can just show the replay of Rumble punching Cormier all the way across the octagon over and over again, and it doesn't matter that Cormier won. You can sell that as a convincing and interesting rematch because Rumble definitely landed his shots, but I don't see it coming out differently. I see Cormier beating him, and frankly, I see John Jones beating him worse. But
yeah, but the John Jones fight is, I would even say more so than Jones Cormier too. Jones Rumble is the most fun fight the UFC can put on at light heavyweight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are some definite questions. I mean, Rumble Johnson, I think, poses some tests and some questions for John Jones that Daniel Cormier does not. Cormier is, I think, the more dangerous opponent, but or more likely to beat Jones, but Rumble's the more dangerous. Rumble's more likely to take his head off with one punch, and everybody would love to see that. And of course, everybody would love to see Jones spank Rumble too. So
Jones has always been very willing to eat shots when going after guys. Like, he's very willing to just stand right in front of you and let you punch him a few times to then get a chance to clinch you up and respond with something harder and bigger. But like Cormier hit him a ton, and so did Gustafsson. Guys who are willing to actively punch him have found his chin. He's not hard to hit; he's just hard to hurt.
Yeah. And Rumble, if anybody can hurt him, Rumble can. So that would be a very interesting fight. Look forward to seeing that, hopefully at some point. But we got to get through John Jones and Daniel Cormier first, which will also be a great fight and a very big fight. So obviously we had the disappointment of UFC 196 going down in flames after Cain Velasquez pulled out hurt, and then Fabricio Verdum pulled out also claiming to be hurt. And so 196 exists no more, but we'll roll on down. The next event, of course, is Hendricks versus Thompson. Instead, it was going to be UFC 196, and now it's UFC Fight Night, Hendricks versus Thompson. It's going to be on Fox Sports 1 on February 6th with former welterweight champ Johnny Hendricks fighting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That should be an interesting fight. Normally, I would predict Big Train, or whatever they call Hendricks, to just rumble right over Thompson. I see Thompson hanging with him, but I don't know if it's the Johnny Hendricks we used to know. So
yeah, I mean, thing is that like Hendricks is not. He should win this. He absolutely should. He's an incredibly competitive kickboxer, even with very, very good kickboxers, and he's a powerful wrestler. But he's not actually a finishing, dominating wrestler once he gets guys down. He's much more of a, I got you down, and now I'm going to hold you down, or I'm going to have to let you back up, and we'll restart. He's not known for his amazing ground and pound skills.
No.
And so it will be interesting to see if he can't kickbox with Stephen Thompson, then does he just have to drag this into like a blanket fight for round after round after round? Maybe. I mean, that's kind of what he had to do to Matt Brown.
Yeah, I don't believe it'll be a 5-round fight, though. I believe it'll be a 3-round fight. It is a 5-round?
Yep. Stephen Thompson really didn't know that, but it is.
I see. Yeah, well, that's interesting because usually when you sign a contract, it's specified. So interesting that they.
His manager might have signed it and just forgot to tell him.
Yeah, no telling. Yeah, and that might be something they put into these co-main event contracts, knowing that the main events occasionally fall apart. So that's coming up on February 6th, and we'll have complete coverage. Of course, Eugene will have Knuckle Up. He might be a little bit late because he's traveling to Italy, and we'll have all the Don't Care preview and the MMA Vivisections, and another episode of If I Did It. So stay tuned. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes so you can hear us without looking at us. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Follow us on Twitter at KidNate, at the Zane Simon. Zane, thank you very much, and adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time.